Any day now.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel, and Anthony, I'm barely hanging on here. I got to tell you,
Been a busy weekend.
If you see me on YouTube right now, you can see I got I'm a little
glistening.
sweaty. I'm not in my normal spot. We're moving. I have two little kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And the cherry on top of all of this is that we're having a house built, which we're really excited about, fortunate, all of those things. But there's the inevitable construction delays, right? So we had to orchestrate selling our home, acquiring the new home, and then there's this like little gap in between. So we're headed to the parents for the next 5 to 6 weeks, which I am very thankful for that. But my wife is not thrilled about the prospect of living with the in-laws for 6 weeks, But yeah, man. So look, the reason why I say all of that is, one, I apologize in advance if I'm not totally sharp, though I did consume all 3 games this weekend. And really, number 2, look, man, I gotta say, sometimes the schedules don't link up. We'll tell people we couldn't make it work. Sorry, we're only doing 1 this week. I went to the ends of the earth to make this show happen today for the people and for you, Anthony. So here we are.
I'm impressed, Bob. I truly am, because I've been there. I've been in your spot many times in my day. There's nothing that sucks more than moving. Nothing sucks.
It sucks. It sucks. I mean, we put our house up on the market in April, and so we've been doing this like slow, like take a box, and you would think that would really cut into a lot of the aggravation. It has not.
You realize just how much shit you've accumulated.
It's insane. And most of it's not mine. And most of it's stuff that really should have been thrown out when we moved here, right? So, yeah, here we are. Phillies win 2 out of 3 over the weekend against the New York Yankees. I would say it was a solid weekend up in the Bronx, certainly Friday and Saturday. The Phillies swung the bats pretty well, got some decent starting pitching. And then yesterday, again, it's like this team is allergic to winning 3 consecutive games. They get out early. Zach Wheeler was not Zach Wheeler. Well, it certainly was not Zach Wheeler in the second inning. They lose 4-3. They had some opportunities in the middle of the game to maybe take the lead. They couldn't do it. And look, you take a step back and you say it was a pretty good weekend. But out west in the Phillies' house of horrors that they can never seem to win in, the Mets sweep the San Francisco Giants, and all of a sudden the Mets are red hot and lead the East by 1.5 games. So that is like the asterisk for me for the weekend. And I know you think the Mets blow and it doesn't matter, and that's fine. You might be right. But like I look up at the standings, I don't like having a nice weekend and saying, oh, damn, they lost ground.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's going to happen, right? That there's the other team's going to get hot, and you're just plodding along, winning your 2 out of 3. I mean, the Phillies won a series against both Boston and the Yankees and lost ground. Like sometimes you just can't. You got to tip your hat. Hey, Mets, good job. You've won 7 straight. That's made the difference here. It's not anything that the Phillies particularly did wrong, because you can't sit there and expect the Phillies to win 6 in a row against the Red Sox and Yankees. So in a sense, you go, okay, that happened. But now you look at what's coming up. The Mets, they're not going to win every game. They got to go out. They now travel to San Diego, play a much better team in the Padres. And the Phillies go to Chicago to play the stinky White Sox. You should probably make the ground back up here in the next few days. So
I really would just like to see, look, we always say it. It's like a mantra. Most baseball people agree. It's something we've said on this show numerous times, but it's hard to sweep. It's certainly hard to sweep a decent team. I know they're missing Judge, but, throw in the fact that they're on the road, no less. But then this week, you look at it, and the White Sox actually had a little fight for the Cubs this past weekend. We obviously know they're a dreadful team, but they hung in and they played some competitive baseball. But this is a team that the Phillies I would like to see sweep. Whether or not that's realistic, I don't know. But it's time for this team to really get hot and really string together some wins. And at some point, you're going to have to sweep a team to do it. And I guess the one thing I will kind of like go back to as I'm looking at this. You take 4 out of 6 against the Red Sox and Yankees any day of the week. You always would sign up for that. There's no way you wouldn't. But isn't it fair to be a little bit agitated with these guys out of the break in that they're letting winnable games go. You get out of the break on last Friday against the Angels, and you get the lead, and Luzardo implodes. And Luzardo implodes a second time against the Red Sox. And then yesterday, you get a lead, and your dude's on the mound. And Zach Wheeler hasn't been like the Zach Wheeler that you'd expect the last 2 or 3 times out. And you're thinking, like, let's get this one. Like, we got our guy. We got Realmuto in the lineup. They went for it yesterday with that lineup, I thought, for the most part. Like, come on, man. Like, they're letting winnable games go here. And
yeah, I get it. But I can also argue back that they've gotten a little bit fortunate too, right? I mean, you look at that first game against Boston last Friday, they got away with one there, right?
Last Monday. Yeah, last Monday.
Or last Monday, rather. Yes, they got away with one there. And that's so those things happen as well. So I do think that those kind of level out where you probably had a game that you should have lost that you win versus a game that you could have won that you lost. And I think that those, on the whole, over the course of a season, with maybe 1 or 2, going one way or the other, they kind of level out over 162. So, yeah, I mean, in the moment, sure. Like, you look at that game yesterday and you go, man, they should have won that game. They really should have won that game. I mean, yeah, 3 solo home runs. That's how you get your 3 runs, and they couldn't manufacture at least one more to kind of get back into it and see what would happen late.
Right.
And so like that. So yeah, that's the frustration, of course. But I think that they've also had their share of, well, that was a one that we had to sweat through, but still got the win, and a win is a win no matter how you get it.
I think you're right. I guess it's like you just go back, and they have not won 3 consecutive games since June 18th through the 20th. And I believe that came in a crossover between the Marlins and Rockies. And it's like that they have this magnetic pull right now to this 13 to 16 games over 500 pocket. And it's like, hey, I think the Phillies are good. I don't think, I'll just repeat what I've said a million times here. I don't think right now they're a World Series team. If things happen this week, maybe that changes. But at the same time, we're looking now at basically a 2-month run where they have been a 500 team. And I would just like to see them separate from that a little bit. I'm not saying they got to win every game. I'm not saying they should have gone 6-0 this past week. But now with the White Sox coming, it's like, all right, guys, it's time. I'd like to see them make that run up ahead of the deadline and really start to separate. Where even if the Mets play them competitively and they don't win the East, which I still think should be the goal, and I do think having a playoff bye should be the goal, but at least start to separate from that dreck in the bottom half of this wild card race and say, like, we are a playoff team. And if we have a bad week, we'll be able to withstand it.
Yeah. And Sean Crowley says, unfortunately, the Phillies have had about 15 games this year where they lose by 1 or 2 runs. You're not going to win every game, but you have to win at least half of those. He follows up with sometimes they just don't throw the hammer down. Hopefully these games don't come back and haunt them. I don't think they'll haunt them. I think that the Phillies are – I know what you're saying, Bob, and I agree with you. I mean, but I look at the National League race right now, and I know the Reds are still a game out. Like they're still hanging in there, and we'll see what they do at the deadline. They could get interesting if they decide to really improve, but it's a 7-team race for 6 spots, and I just don't think the Phillies are going to plummet out of one of the top 5. I really don't. Right. And so they're going to be there come October. But you're right. I mean, you want to win the division. You want to get the bye. You don't want to have to play a 3-game series, because the one thing about, the wild card, I know that they've had a lot of success in the past, but you look at the teams that they've played in the wild card in previous years, 22 and 23, the Cardinals and the Marlins, the team that you're going to end up playing this year in the wild card, they're going to be as good as you are. Like, all these teams have the same record, right? I mean, the top 5 teams are within 2 games of each other. So if you're the 4-5 seed and you're playing the Cubs or the Brewers, let's just say it's probably one of them. Like, why are you confident in that series in a best of 3 just because you've won wild card series in the past? Like, I don't like that. Like, I think that this is a year you got to go out and win the division. So and you're right in that regard. Let's go out and get some of these games that that you haven't been able to get to this point.
Fun series this week, by the way. You mentioned these teams, the Cubs and Brewers go head to head this week. Should be interesting. Both 62 and 43 tied atop the NL Central. I just looked it up. One-run games. How have the Phillies performed this season after yesterday's loss? They're 17-15 in one-run games. They've scored 112 runs. They've allowed 110. So they're right there. They're like 500 team in one-run games. They're not exceptionally good at it, but they're not absolutely dreadful either. Look, there were two things that I think that yesterday happened or popped for me on my radar, and I just wonder how it relates to the deadline here. So much of what is going to happen over the next 72 plus hours is going to be predicated upon the willingness of some of these teams that are nosediving back to mediocrity, and will they want to deal? Can they find a fit? Do they like the Phillies prospects enough? Do they like the Phillies prospects more than another team that's going to be in the conversation? So whether it's Eugenio Suarez or Luis Robert or whoever the name is going to be. But yesterday, two things happened that one further solidified a longstanding opinion of mine, and the other one is interesting. So let's talk about Otto Kemp first, who you made a reference to in the Ottoman Kempire. Very clever. Had they won that game, would that have been on the back page of the Daily News this morning? Would be my question.
I know. Yeah, maybe.
So, look, 2 home runs yesterday. Certainly his best game as a pro. He is giving them something from the right side here. You go to his last 30 games, he's hitting 255. OPS is near 800. He's starting to show a little bit of power. Do you look at Otto Kemp and say, good bench piece, good guy to just have here, but not a guy I want to rely on going down the stretch in the final 2 months of the regular season and into the postseason? Or, do you say maybe this is a guy that can play 3-4 times a week and really give me something? Like, how do you assess Otto Kemp now after yesterday's game?
Yeah, I mean, I like the bat. I really do. I think it plays well. And so that's the thing that I sit there and say, I think he's a guy that is better than Weston Wilson, right? Like what you expected Weston Wilson to be beginning of the season. Oh, he's going to be your right-handed bat against lefties and platoon in left field or platoon somewhere, right? I think Otto Kemp is a better version of him. So you definitely sit there and go, okay, I could see him as the right-handed bat in left field, whatever that platoon's going to look like after Thursday. But I can also potentially see him getting the odd start against right-hander as well, much in the way that a lot of people wanted Edmundo Sosa to play more, right? I don't think Edmundo Sosa is that guy. And I think Edmundo Sosa is what he is and serves a really good purpose on this team, playing when he plays, usually against left-handed pitching. Usually he's an energy guy, does a lot for the team, great. But I think Otto Kemp has more offensive potential than him as well. He's not good defensively. We've seen this. Third base is not fantastic, although he did make a nice play yesterday. That's when I was really like, okay, this is the Otto Kemp game. But I sit there and say, maybe you find a way to get Kemp in here or there. Maybe if you want to give Bryce a game as DH later in the season and just have Otto Kemp play first base for a game or whatever. Like you find ways to get him that extra game every once in a while. Then I think he's a serviceable guy and it fits a role on your bench and on your roster.
Yeah, I just wonder how it plays into their thoughts at the deadline. Like, we keep saying right-handed bat, and if you're going to go out and say, well, Robert, that's going to fill that void. And Suarez is a little bit of a different conversation because it takes a little bit more of a roster from a defensive standpoint. It takes a little bit more of a reconfiguration to bring in a guy like Suarez, and I want to talk about that specifically because he is a hot name. The Brewers are involved, apparently. The Phillies have some interest, apparently. You take all of these reports and rumors with a grain of salt this time of year. But, do you think – I guess the question to you would be, do you think it's enough to say – let's just say they don't do anything in terms of bringing in another outfielder, and the move ends up being Kepler out, Crawford up. They're going to give Crawford center field, and they're going to platoon Marsh and Kemp in left field. Do you think that that's a possibility? Do you think that that would be a viable solution?
I would be underwhelmed if that was the solution.
For what it's worth, I mean, I'm trying to play host. I'll now interject my own opinion. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I actually do think they're going to do something of more significance here.
I do too, but I would. That's why I said I would be underwhelmed. Because I look at that and say, you're really banking on a kid coming up and him being the guy. And if it doesn't work, then what? I'd rather have Justin Crawford as the fallback option to whatever move you make here at the deadline being your plan A.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work out, all right, let's call Crawford up and he's plan B. I'd feel so much more comfortable with that than I would be hand the reins over to this kid and go get him. And then we don't have an alternative if this doesn't work. Like, that's the thing that's why I don't like that. I think it's fine as a second choice, but not as your primary one.
Do you think, and I was going to hold off on this question because it's like, I'm going to get the Rojas. I think that's where I'm going. That at bat that we saw yesterday in the middle of the game, I thought was the worst at bat. There's been many of them this year. I thought that was the worst Phillies at bat of the season yesterday. And I want to get to that because I just want to vent from a therapeutic standpoint and just continue to say how right I was about that player. But JT Realmuto, and it's like kind of personal. It's like a media thing because there's these like Rojas guys out there, and I'm like, give me a break. JT Realmuto, 333 since June 1st. He leads the National League in batting average since June 1st.
Yeah.
How about that? And you see Bryce Harper. Now, Bryce Harper did not have a good game yesterday. He didn't really have a great weekend. He obviously hits the home run against Stroman on Saturday, but I think directionally speaking, you feel really good about where Bryce Harper is and where he's going to be over the last couple months, which is different. I mean, I know that you were confident, even when he was at his low point. You're like, I think it's coming. You were right. Kudos to you, but you still need to see it. You still need to see him go off and say, like, okay, there it is. So you have Realmuto playing like the JT Realmuto of old. Fantastic defensive play yesterday, too, at the plate. That's about as good as it gets. You have Schwarber in the middle of this MVP-like season. You have Harper firing the way that he is now. Does that make you say, hey, we don't need to be as desperate or as aggressive even at the deadline because we are starting to get more from these guys offensively? Or do you think it makes them say, you know what? We have this starting staff. Bryce looks like Bryce. Schwarber is out of his mind. JT's making that last real push. We got to go do this. Like, we got to be a little bit more aggressive now than we would have otherwise been because I think we might be a little bit better now than we were a month ago.
Yeah, I think it's closer to that, but I don't think it's like when I say the Phillies are all in, I think that they're all in because they believe that most of what they have here can win a championship. But I don't think what I mean by all in that, we have 6 top 100 prospects. We're going to trade 4 of them here to try and make this team a World Series contender. Like, they may trade 1 or 2 at most. And I think that's what so I think it's going to be that kind of threading the needle down the middle type of deal where they're going to be aggressive, but not over aggressive. And they're not going to just sit on their hands either. I think they're going to make a move or 2 moves that matter. But it's not going to be some grand overhaul that I think a lot of people are hoping for. I think you're going to, let's just say that I'm just going to throw 2 names out, Bob. Just these are the 2 names. Let's just say they come away from the deadline adding Luis Robert and Johan Duran. Is that enough? I think it could be.
Do you think Robert used in I don't want to say a pure platoon, but like a 70-30 type of split, or do they say, here it is, dude?
I think I think if they were to trade for Robert, I think at first it's you're the guy. Just go out there. But they have the alternative of, hey, maybe we end up doing, you know what I'm saying? Because you don't know with him. I mean, he's an injury issue, right? He's always hurt. He's hurt again. He got hit by a 101 mile per hour fastball on the forearm. X-rays were negative, so it looks like he's okay, but he missed a game yesterday because of it. So the guy's constantly injured. Not had a great year and a half, although since June 10th he's been pretty solid. But you're running a risk. That's a little bit of a risk, but it's worthy in my mind. It's a worthy risk, right? It's a risk that if it pans out, it could be is really, really good for this team. So
how far would you be willing to go to bring in that particular player?
I don't think you need to go far. Because of his contract situation, I don't think you need to go far. Right. He's got team options for the next 2 years that are $20 million a year. There's no way anyone's picking that up unless he gets traded somewhere and goes off, right? So it's basically a rental. So I don't think that the White Sox are going to get much of anything for him. In all honesty, I really don't. I think you could get him for, a couple of lower tier prospect type players at this point.
There is a report that I saw last night, right around 9:00, from a writer, Spanish-speaking baseball reporter, Francis Romero.
Yeah.
And he reported, and he's got 27,000 followers on.
He's good.
This is like a real guy.
Yeah.
Trade talks between the Yankees and Diamondbacks over Suarez stalled after Arizona asked for an MLB player, an upper-level prospect, AA to AAA, and at least one lower-level prospect per industry sources. Yankees still holding tight to top farm talent. Okay. I guess the most obvious and pressing question off of that is that a price that if you were the Phillies, you'd be willing to meet? And in my pipe dream, you want an MLB player, and we got a little bit of a roster jam up here. Could I interest you in a 280 to 285 hitting third baseman who's worked really hard to improve defensively, who's under team control for one more year, and you're the Arizona Diamondbacks and you don't totally want to punt, and your ownership is like, I don't want to do a rebuild and I kind of want to try to win. Maybe not this year, but next year. Could I interest you in that third baseman?
So I'll play your game with you here for a second, but then I'm going to say something different. So the game that I'll play with you is, yeah, sure, I'm in. I'm in with that. If that's what you're doing, if you're going Bohm and Abel for Suarez, I mean, I'd like to re-sign Suarez for a couple years if I could. I think it's a lot to give up for a rental, but yeah, I mean, I could see that. But here's the thing I'm going to say. Just from my experience and being around this stuff for a long, long time, when the Diamondbacks are asking for a rental player, it's still early, right? In a lot of ways. Like the change in the ask doesn't happen until a couple, 2 to 3 days before the deadline comes in any sport, really. And so, you're probably going to see the Diamondbacks pull back on that ask maybe as soon as today. Maybe they wait till tomorrow, but whatever. They're going to do it here in the next few days. You always ask for more. The Yankees were desperate because their situation was bad. And I honestly think that the Yankees made the right move because we saw this weekend, holy hell, how bad their defense is. So adding Ryan McMahon, who is not as good a hitter, obviously, as Gino Suarez, like that's, but he's going to make a huge difference in that infield defensively. And you saw it in the 2 games against the Phillies. He was really good defensively. So I think that the Yankees pivoted because they had to. Somebody's going to give the Diamondbacks something good for Eugenio Suarez. I just don't think it's going to be that much to get him.
If you're the Phillies, and he's the one that everybody wants to talk about because of the home run totals, because of the obvious need that the Phillies have in terms of the right-handed power. I guess what I keep coming back to is I have these visions of October where you have Harper, you have Schwarber, and you have teams that are just not going to let those 2 guys beat them. And if you have a player that has that potency in the mix, doesn't that cure the issue? If you asked me a week ago, would they do this? I'd say no shot. I don't even know why we're talking about this. Now I feel like it's a possibility. I still don't think it's going to happen.
Well, so let me throw something at you, Bob. So over the weekend, I put a poll out on Twitter where I asked people, would you trade Mick Abel for Eugenio Suarez? Straight up. Knowing that he's a 34-year-old free agent, may not re-sign here. And then you got to consider the fit, right? Like, where do you move guys? How does it work out? It's probably Kyle Schwarber to left field. All right. So to make Suarez your DH is probably what the solution is. If you do that, right? That's probably the most likely scenario. So I asked, and I was honestly surprised because I thought everybody would be so enamored with the notion of adding a 36 home run bat to the middle of your lineup. I was surprised that it was as close as it was, and it was 56-44 was the vote. Yes, 56-44 in favor, but 44% said no, and I get it because I sit there and say to myself, this is a bad defensive team, and we're about to make it worse with this trade. And I still think, yes, you need that bat, but you can't be a terrible defensive team in the playoffs.
No, you can't. And I mean, look, my retort to that would be like, well, they were terrible in 2022 and they came within 2 games of the World Series. That all being said, there were a couple different instances in that postseason that they could have been sunk by their defense and they were able to overcome it. And I also can't point to one postseason run and say that makes it okay. Much like I was perplexed when the owner talked about how you can't just go in at the deadline because Ruben Amaro did it 15 years ago and then they blew for a decade. Like that to me that made no sense. I could not believe that those words came out of his mouth. Okay, fine. My last point on this would be, if not the Phillies, then probably some other team, possibly a National League team. And look, I'm not saying that this guy is Babe Ruth and that if you trade for him, oh my God, he's going to put you over the top and you automatically go to the World Series. But how much of it do you have to massage? 2 different parts. One, if you don't get them, someone else might, and that might push them above you or past you in terms of your roster construction. And then the second part of it is, and I thought that maybe the Phillies were a victim of this a little bit a year ago. I know the Phillies love their clubhouse and they rely on one another and it's a tight-knit group and all that happy horse shit. How much of it plays in when the deadline comes and goes and you don't go make that big move and you say like, we're right there. You know, we've been knocking on the door at this thing for the last few years. We have a good group. We think we can win the World Series. How much of it, like from a psychological standpoint, when your ownership group, when your front office goes in and makes the splash move, how much does that invigorate you as a clubhouse and say like, all right, now let's go get this thing? And if they don't go out and do something big or consequential, you know, is there a little bit of a letdown where you go, all right, like, I mean, we got enough here to like compete, but and you're like left kind of underwhelmed. I mean, do you think that's real, or is that just like a totally made up narrative talking point that I like?
No, it could be real, but here's what I'll say to temper it. Let's see who gets moved at the deadline, right? And when you sit back and the dust settles and you get to look at it, you know, from a totality of the league, and you could sit there and go, okay, who could they really have gotten that they didn't get that somebody else got, that you go, oh, that should have been the move that they made. Right. And so like, ultimately that's what it'll come down to. If there are players like that and you go, why couldn't you give up what the Mets gave up for this guy or what the Cubs gave up for this guy? Then you can have that argument and say, yeah, maybe that impacts. Maybe they look at it and go, well, this sucks. But then if you look at it, it's either super overpays for players or big names that just don't move and everybody's just kind of adding along the margins. Well, then you sit there and go, well, they did the best that they could with what was out there, right? I mean, so I think that's the thing. And even in that moment, I think then you look back at last winter and say, that's where they screwed this up, right? If you don't get the players that you want to get or the types of bats or pitchers or whatever that you need here by Thursday, it's not necessarily going to be that they did it wrong this week, but rather that they did it wrong in November, December, January.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. One thing I want to do here, we are going to do a little bit of a condensed show. We're looking at about maybe 40, 45 minutes here. As I spoke about at the top, I have some things I got to take care of today. Let's just take a current survey of the market. And do you think these teams are going to be sellers at the deadline? And I'll start with the obvious ones. You have the Rockies, you have the Nationals, you have the Pirates. We'll stick on the National League first. After that, you have the Atlanta Braves. And I saw that they traded for Eric Fetty yesterday. Am I right in seeing that? They did. I don't really understand anything that the Braves are doing. They have been
Well, they got him for next to nothing. They're pitching. Well, they had to put Grant Holmes on IL with another injury. They've lost 4 starting pitchers this year.
Yeah, they've lost 8 of their last 10 games, 5 straight. They're 16 under. They're 12 back. The Marlins are red hot, surging. They did lose yesterday, but the Marlins now 4 games under 500. And so this brings me to our first interesting team in this conversation. Not that the Miami Marlins possess players necessarily that the Phillies would maybe be linked to, but certainly they were perceived as a team that would be willing to sell at the deadline. They are, as we talk right now, 6 games out of a wild card spot, same as the Arizona Diamondbacks. Do you think that the Marlins are kind of inclined to say, look, like we are already young, we are already cheap, we're playing good baseball. Our best path moving forward is to hang on to this group and let them create some momentum going into 26.
Yeah, and I want to get a little bit more into the Marlins as part of one last thing today. But I think in this discussion for where they fit as far as the deadline is concerned, I really do believe that they are going to have a quiet deadline. I mean, the only guys that I think that they could potentially move, obviously Alcantara. I mean, that name's come up a number of times. And I look at that and I say, that wouldn't hurt them because he's not been good, right? So, I sit there and say, yeah, you can move Alcantara and still be the team that you are currently. That's really kind of, being a thorn in a lot of team sides. Because Alcantara's ERA is what, 7? It's over 7, I believe. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, it's 6.66 in 20 starts. He leads the league in most earned runs allowed with 77 in 104 innings. That's nuts, But beyond that, like I look at that Marlins team and I don't see anybody else that I go, oh yeah, they're definitely going to trade that guy. I mean, the only one maybe Anthony Bender, who's had like a really nice season as a middle relief arm, who's 30 years old. Maybe he doesn't quite fit their timeline. Okay, fine. But I don't see them trading any of their other starters. Ed Cabrera has been good for them. Perez is just back. He's been pretty good for them. They really like the kid Max Meyer, who's been okay for them. I look at that and I say they're not going to move those guys, and their lineup is a bunch of names that nobody knows other than the younger players who they're going to keep, right? I mean, Stowers has been great, and Xavier Edwards is really good. Otto Lopez, these players are going to stay there. So who are they trading? I don't think that they are going to move anybody.
All right. Well, we obviously know the division leaders are going to be in the National League. Don't want to waste time stating the obvious there. Diamondbacks already in the midst of a sell. It looks like they are going to further sell. The Cardinals have been terrible here out of the break. They are 3-7 in their last 10, have lost 2 straight. Game over 500. Still only 3.5 games out of wild card. Just real quick, I mean, how do you view the Cardinals? What do you think they're going to do here?
I think they're going to sell. I do. I think Helsley is going to get traded, which was maybe something that you didn't think was going to happen before. I do wonder what the Arenado situation is. Would he move waive his no trade to go somewhere else and have a chance to win at this point? All teams go through it. I just think that they're going through it at just the wrong time. I mean, they're still only 3.5 games out of a playoff spot, which is not far. But I think they played over their heads for a while, and I think that their executives recognize that they're probably not ready this year. So keep doing what they're doing, but trade off some pieces.
Well, the Giants are an interesting team, sort of going through a similar struggle here. They're only 3 games out of a wild card spot, but a dreadful weekend. They're 2-8 in their last 10. I mean, what do you think here? Do they kind of just middle it? Hey, we're all right. We have a shot. We're not going to go in necessarily, but we're not going to strip here either.
Well, they just made their big move, right? I mean, they already made their big move trading for Devers, right? So I think that they are a middle, right down the middle, not do a lot. I think they're a team that just kind of maybe they do a couple of fringy things, but I don't think they're going to sell. I also don't think they're going to really be big buyers either.
I like the Reds a little bit. They're playing well right now. They've won 4 straight, 6 over. I don't know. But to me, it's like that ownership. Hey, if you go out and you make a couple deals, you're right there.
Well, I think that's a spot that Suarez would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a spot that you go, okay, we're going for it. You put him on a team if he's familiar with the organization, good manager there now. Their pitching is holding up. I think that's a good fit for Suarez. And then they become a little bit of a dangerous team. I'd still rather face them over any of the other teams that are currently in the playoff spot in the National League. But yeah, I think that they suddenly become a more legitimate team if they go out and make that kind of a move.
Yeah, and then obviously in the American League, the White Sox will sell. They played a little bit better lately. They did lose 2 out of 3 over the weekend to the Cubs. The Athletics are terrible. negative 121 run differential is horrendous. It's the second worst in the sport, besides only the Rockies. But aren't they fun? Like, aren't they just a fun bad team?
Well, their lineup is fun. Like, I mean, really, really fun.
They had that like 20-game stretch right around where they played the Phillies, where they were horrible.
Yeah.
They just couldn't figure it out. Outside of that, which unfortunately is, 3.5 weeks. But other than that, they've basically been a 500 team. But man, you look at the run differential. I mean, that's 121, and that's on a 4-game winning streak right now. They're going to sell in some capacity. I know that people want to talk about Miller. That would be one where I just say didn't see that coming. I don't think that the Phillies, in terms of the control that a team would have, what it would cost. If you're the A's, why would you want to do that? I mean, you'd really have to get 4 meaningful prospects, I think, back in order to do that. Orioles are going to sell. And then that brings us to this like weird middle ground of the AL where you're talking about teams that are anywhere between 4 to 5.5 games out. The Royals look like they're, in it. They just re-signed what's his face, right? The guy
Seth Lugo.
Lugo.
They traded for Randall Grichuk, and then they re-signed Seth Lugo. So they're in.
They're trying to compete.
Yeah.
Angels, I think, stink. Philly series aside, I think that they will probably sell. The Twins look like they are going to sell. They are 3-7 in their last 10. They're trending the wrong way. The Guardians are interesting. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. They're only a game under 500. They're 3.5 games out, but we've talked about Clase. He's a guy that's come up a couple times. Kwan's name has been out there. Whether or not that's a pipe dream, I don't know. That's a team that's really interesting to me because they are right there. They could still go in a number of directions. And I wonder, like, do the next 2 games matter to them? Like, are they in this situation where we're like, let's just see where we're at on Wednesday night? Like, how do you view the Guardians and all this?
So I'm glad you brought this up because this is gonna lead me to my hot take of the day. This is my big hot take. My big hot take is the 3 teams currently in the wild card spot in the American League, which are the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Mariners. None of them make the playoffs, and 3 teams that are currently not in all do. And the 3 that I have getting in include the Kansas City Royals, who we already talked about, the Texas Rangers, who are finally playing like the team that I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year when I picked them to go to the World Series, and the Cleveland Guardians. And the reason I put the Guardians in here is the Guardians look at it and say, we went to the ALCS last year. We have the easiest schedule remaining for the rest of the season. Why would we blow this up? Like, we're right there, 3.5 out. Let's go for it. And I think that they are. And you've seen some major cracks in Detroit. Not to say that they're going to catch the Tigers, but that's like the one team that they play in the second half. You go, okay, that's a good team. Well, maybe they're not as good as everyone thought they were. And so, like, I think Cleveland's going to get back into it. I don't think they're moving Clase. I don't think they're moving Kwan. I think that they're going to stay in the race. If anything, they may add. And I think that that's a team to watch in the second half of the season here.
A couple quick ones for you. I've had some people text me and say, "Hey, can you just bring this up on the show and run it through Anthony and see what you guys come up with?" Taijuan Walker over the weekend was okay. He still doesn't really have a defined role moving forward. Probably not a playoff factor. Has he done enough where maybe a team that needs some depth in their starting rotation would say, like, look, he's owed, I think, roughly about $24 million through the remainder of his contract. We'd be willing to take on 15 of that. You guys don't really have a true need for him. Is Taijuan Walker a guy that could get moved this week?
That's a good question. I don't think they'll do it just because Nola's not ready. Nola's got at least 3 rehab starts, maybe 4, but at least 3. You're probably, I think Mick Abel's going to get moved. I think he's the one guy that's probably going to get traded for sure. And Painter doesn't seem to quite be ready. And so now you're like, well, where's the rest of the depth? Like, who are you turning it to at that point to be a starter for you, for the next 3 weeks? And if somebody else gets hurt beyond that.
Right.
And so I don't think it happens, but I think it's an intriguing thought that maybe somebody would take that chance on him because he's had an okay season.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I think you could get to this winter and say, all right, maybe not for 18 million, but could we maybe get some of this cash back? I think so.
Yeah, I think off season is much more doable. Same with Castellanos. Like I know his name came up in trade talk briefly. They said the Royals were interested, whatever. I think both Walker and Castellanos are guys that are much more easily moved in the offseason than they are before Thursday.
We've kind of kicked the tires on conversations about current players on the roster who could possibly be moved. I kind of smiled. I had a half smile for those of you not watching on YouTube when I brought up the Bohm thing to Arizona. We've talked a little bit about Brandon Marsh as maybe a guy that a team could call on potentially. Bryson Stott's value is so low right now that I don't think it would even make sense for the Phillies to listen on him. What about a guy like Amunosa, who certainly is really important what the Phillies are doing, and I'm not suggesting otherwise, but is a pretty interesting player that can play multiple positions for you. We see that he has some pop, he has some life, plays with some energy, and is also under team control in 26. Is that a guy that if a team called and said, like, look, we're interested in him, we might have something that makes sense for you in a win now scenario, would you listen on Amunosa?
You listen on everybody, right? Anybody who calls, you listen and see what they say. I don't know if they will, though. Like, I think that there's a lot of value to him for a lot of different reasons. All the things you talked about. He's really their only backup shortstop. I know Stott can play there if need be. So I
think I'd be more keen on that idea if Bryson Stott was not playing like Bryson Stott is playing right now, where you say it's a bit of a luxury. It's nice to have the depth piece and move him around. But I mean, given what you have at second base right now, I think that you might be relying more and more on him down the stretch, and maybe even the bulk of starts in October. I mean, I think we're reaching a point where if Bryson Stott cannot recover, I just don't know. You face a righty game 1, I guess it'll be Stott, but I start to think long and hard about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Last one I have for you here before we get to one last thing. Over under 2.5 new Phillies on this roster, on the major league roster by Friday.
Under. I go 2.
2.
I think it's 2. Yeah.
And is that an outfielder and a reliever?
I think so. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2 relievers with the second one kind of being akin to what they did last year when they traded for Tanner Banks.
Okay.
Right. Not like just a middle relief type guy. I think that's a possibility. But no, I think it's 2 for sure. I think a bat, outfield bat I think is the preference, and then a closer.
I don't really have any new analysis, but I did quickly mention this earlier, and I said I was going to make a big stink about it, and I won't. But Johan Rojas yesterday in the middle of that game, they fall down 4-2. Kemp hits the second home run. It's 4-3. They immediately put 2 more men on base. Nobody out.
Is this the center field report?
It is the center. 3 pitches, all there. Does not swing.
I know.
That at bat, look, the top of the order, yes, there are many obvious things that can be said. Zach Wheeler in the second inning cannot give back a multi-run lead that early and only go 5 2/3 and give up 4 earned runs. And it's Zach Wheeler's fault. No question. The top of the lineup, Schwarber actually had some good swings.
Yeah.
Almost altered the game, but over. Trey Turner yesterday stunk. Bryce Harper yesterday really stunk. You can't go 0 for 12, 1 through 3, right? And so to that end, are you going to pin this all on Johan Rojas? Certainly you are not. But this is the problem, man. This is what I keep coming back to for people that are like, oh, you play him every, I guess I'd rather see, all that being said, I think I still rather see him out there than Max Kepler. I'd still rather see Marsh in left and Rojas in center because I just don't ever want to see Max Kepler play anymore?
It's a better defensive thing.
Yeah. So like I'm in on that. This is not the solution. You have to be able to move a runner there. You have to be able, when the game is swinging back in favor of you, like you're watching that, and you're like, here they come. They're going to sweep this team. And then you get that at bat. And I know it's only the first out, and there's 2 more outs made in the inning, 2 more cracks out with a runner in scoring position. Those guys fail too, but you've got to move the friggin' runner there. It was dreadful. It was the worst, most feeble, stupid, thoughtless at bat, useless at bat that I've seen from this team this season.
So the thing I didn't get about it, like, so he shows bunt the first time. First of all, here's the thing. He should be up there in a total sacrifice situation.
Square to the pitcher.
Right. But he wasn't. Like he goes like he's going to drag bunt it, right? But so that's a problem, number one. And he pulls it back and it's a strike. Okay, fine. Why is he not doing it again on strike 2? Does anyone think that this is a real element of surprise that Johan Rojas might be bunting with first and second and nobody out down a run? Like, there's no doubt he's bunting. So he should be square again the second time. And he just watches again. That second pitch is the one that really ate me up, Bob. Like, the first one was like, all right, you need to be square. That's terrible form. All right, whatever. Get it right this time. And then he just watches it. And that's where it's like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, look, speed, athleticism, defense, fine. If you're going to hit a $179 over your last 30 games, the 474 OPS, you've got to be able to put a bunt down. You got to be able to play situational baseball. At the very least, I need you to be able to put the ball on the ground there and move a runner. And if you can't do that, then you can't play Major League Baseball. And sure as hell can't play it for a team that's trying to win a championship. And I would be just stunned. I mean, I know there's scenarios where, especially if you weaken yourself defensively, maybe you keep him as that last outfield piece to try to offset some of your deficiencies in the outfield. I'm not saying that he has to be off the roster come Friday, but if there is a configuration where this man is playing meaningful innings for this team in bulk, holy shit. I that's the only other thing I can say about it at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. We've been on this.
I know we've been aligned on this. We're not having some, spirited back and forth, but I think I'd just like to point that out one final time ahead of the trade deadline.
Yeah, one last time before the deadline, and then we might be talking about it again on Friday. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right, let's get
to one last thing, which is actually I want to do 2 quick things as part of one last thing. The first, I mentioned I wanted to bring up the Marlins, and this is a kind of like a Phillies one last thing. The Phillies schedule, Bob, in September is really tough when you look at it. They have to go out to a road trip in Milwaukee. They have the Mets for 4. The Royals, who we talked about, who feel like that they're going to be a contender, they're coming in for 3. And then you got to go out west to play the Dodgers. There's a tough stretch in there. And it's split up by the Marlins. And then there's the last home series of the year, the Marlins come in again. Maybe when we looked at this calendar at first, we looked at that and said, well, at least they have, 6 against the Marlins mixed in there.
Yeah.
Maybe those 6 are not quite as easy as we thought, right? I mean, that month of September is starting to look like a gauntlet for the Phillies, whereas before it was like, well, all right, we still got you got at least the Marlins breaking stuff up there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Marlins. Look, we went through this earlier. I don't know that we've dedicated this much time to the Marlins in a show since the playoffs a couple years ago, but could they be a young, interesting team that's really flashing right now and then ultimately cools off again and ends up being 12, 13 games under 500 at the end of the season? Yeah, I mean, I think that's very possible, quite honestly. But yes, when you look at it on paper and kind of just bring this thing full circle to what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, yes, you're not going to sweep teams series after series. But now you arrive this week at a series against the White Sox, and because your schedule is what it is the final month of the season, it's time now. Like, it's time to make a little bit of a run. Like, let's get to 20 games over 500. Let's start to separate ourselves from the pack in the National League and in the bottom part of that wild card race, and try to get back on top of the Mets here and hold on in September, because it will not be easy. This is not a team that looks like it's going to win 17, 18, 19 games the final month of the year.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and now the real one last thing.
Okay.
Did we witness the greatest single game output by a hitter of all time with Nick Kurtz over the weekend?
I think so. it's a shame how under the radar that is, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, imagine if Aaron Judge did that. Imagine if Bryce Harper did that. I mean, people will be talking about that for eternity.
Well, so here's the comparison I wanted to make. You remember last year when Ohtani had his 6-hit, 10 RBI game, right? And everybody like made it out to be the greatest game ever played by any player ever. And it was talked about in Major League Baseball circles for a week and a half. Like, it was a big deal because it was Shohei Ohtani. But because this is a rookie, which, by the way, makes it all the more impressive. That it's
impressive, yes.
Yeah, that hits 4 home runs, 5 extra base hits, 8 RBIs, all in the same game. Like, and it's just like, oh yeah, that was cool. And then we're past it. Like, what's the sport missing here? Like, they should be praising this forever. Like, this might have been the best single game by a hitter we've ever seen.
There's a tangential talking point to what you're bringing up here, which, by the way, did you happen to see Dodgers Red Sox over the weekend and what Garrett Crochet had to say?
I didn't see what he had to say, no.
So, Ohtani obviously takes him deep at the start of the game. The Red Sox go on to win. Crochet pitches pretty well. And he says after the game, I made 2 bad pitches. I think I've seen them on Fox 30 times already tonight. You'd think that the Dodgers won. Which it speaks to me because, look, I mean, baseball has to market its stars. There was a time where baseball was dreadful at marketing its stars. I think that was a really fair criticism. Shohei Ohtani is the biggest draw in the game. I get it. But you know me. I'm a little bit of a hater in my heart. I'm always like, I got a little hate in my heart. And it's like, Shohei Ohtani was 2 for 6 tonight with a double. Here it is on Instagram. And like, they really, more than maybe any player in sports, baseball like shoves Shohei Ohtani in your face.
Yeah, they do. And it's
like, I get it. I'm not even saying they shouldn't, but like, they just do. And I'm annoyed by it. And I'd like to see a player be annoyed by it.
Here's my response to that, Bob. I don't harbor any grudge against Shohei Ohtani. I enjoy watching.
He's great. I mean, how could you not watch? How could you not enjoy watching Shohei Ohtani?
Great player. But because they do that, because they shove him in your face so much, it makes you want to hate him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it makes him a bad guy.
I remember a couple of years ago in the playoffs, it was like 6 batters till Shohei Ohtani. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, like, that's the thing. It's like, just let him be, promote him, but just promote other players too. Let's not just go so far on this. Yeah. And I think they went way too far. They go too far. And I think that they're doing an injustice to this kid in Oakland or Sacramento or whatever freaking the A's are. Like, I mean, that's a hell of an output, a hell of a game, and it should be championed a hell of a lot more than it is.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go.
Good work.
So yeah, that's it. That's it for us. Anyway, that's today's Phightin Words. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, you can always subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast. But we prefer it be right here on YouTube. You can click the thumbs up, ring the bell. That way, when Bob and I are going live, and we never know when it's going to happen. It's going to be at random times, early in the morning, days that Bob's moving. Like, it could happen at any moment. So you don't want to miss it. So make sure you do that. And if you're listening in the podcast feed and you want to find us on YouTube, it's youtube.com/@Phightin Words. So for Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony SanFilippo saying thanks for tuning in. And we will see. We're going to talk to you on Thursday.
A trade deadline special.
Trade deadline special. After the deadline, we're going to do it at night. After the deadline, not before.
We're going to break down the Iron Pig's newest reliever.
Yeah, and we'll talk about all the things the Phillies did do or didn't do before the deadline. So for Bob, I'm Anthony saying thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on Thursday, everyone.